Good morning, everyone. Good to have you here with us. Welcome once again to the Auram podcast on this bright and a bit chilly Saturday morning. I am your host. My name is Anthony Kuria, and welcome to the show that discusses all things that relate to the human capital element. Aurum podcast is hosted by Aurum Consultants, a human resource and risk advisory consultancy that helps businesses to build winning teams. Today, as usual, I have our usual crew, our HR experts that we love hosting here at the Aurum podcast. First and foremost is our lead consultant here at Aurum. Her name is Zipporah Kuria. Welcome, Zippy.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, viewers.
Yes, and also with us is Martha Thuku, the HR specialist. I like saying she's the consultant to the consultants. Welcome, Martha.
Well, thank you so much, Tony. Good morning, viewers, and thanks for joining us. And as usual, I like taking opportunity of telling you about where I work and what we
Yes.
do that can help you. Uh, I work with LVCT Health, a dynamic organization supporting the government in the reduction and eradication of HIV and AIDS. But other things that we do is we train on matters mental health. We have counselors who can counsel you if you or your organization need this service. And right now, there's another new kid in the block called what is it called? Safeguarding. And most
Mhm.
organizations, especially in the NGO sector, we are expected to run with this policy, and it has to do with sexual exploitation,
Mm.
mostly at the workplace and beyond. So we are also experts in this training. So if you need more information about this, please contact Oram Consultants. They will be able to get you to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. I like the fact that the NGO you work with have themes that are very close to what we do in what HR does in any organization. Issues regarding mental health and mental health, especially the last 2 years, has been a big deal. Together with harassment in the workplace, those are things that any HR, any entrepreneur, any business person needs to be aware about to be able to prevent the same from taking place. But having said that, to our viewers and listeners, thank you for coming in. Today, we want to conclude what you've been discussing during this month, the issue of employee discipline management. It's been very interesting, very exciting, very illuminating. We have learned things regarding how you onboard, things regarding how do you handle disputes within the workplace, how do you handle just the culture within the company that reduces conflicts and harmonizes work and increases productivity. And today we want to talk about, we have done all that. You have onboarded, you have trained, you have inducted, you have worked, you've worked. But like it is in life, there are times when you need to say goodbye. You need to say kwaheri ya kuonana. So it is as important to offboard your employees in the same way you onboarded them. You shook hands nicely, you were like, oh, we're so excited to have you in our company. And the staff said, oh, I'm so excited to come and work here. But inevitably in life, there's a time to shake hands and say, it's been real, it's been good. So, for you as a business person, for you as a manager, as an entrepreneur, it's important how you offboard your employee as much as how you onboard them. Why? Because a great and professional send off protects the image of your company and helps you build a good reputation. Remember, we are always branding ourselves. We are always branding and showing an image out there as an entity, as a company, as individuals. So how you handle that send off is as important as how you did the onboarding, and that is why the disciplinary aspect comes in. So today we want to discuss how to offboard an employee due to indiscipline. Yeah, that harsh word. Things become thick there. It's indiscipline, but remember your reputation to protect. Lakini sasa people have reached a place where you're thinking, dude, madam, I think we need to shake hands. But now, how you do it can damage you or can enhance your reputation. So, Zippy, let's begin. Let's discuss this. Why is it important to offboard employees in a good way?
Thank you, Anthony. This is an interesting conversation today of offboarding employees or terminating employees and handling it in a good way. And there are many reasons why you would offboard or terminate an employee, or they would exit the organization. And it's always easier when an employee has resigned and you are able to have a conversation and part ways in a good way, because it is not acrimonious. It's not because the employee did something to make them be exited from the organization. I think the challenge comes in when things are not working between the employee and the employer, and there's a reason to get to the point of separating or going in different ways. And I think this is where the challenge comes in. How do you do it in a nice way? Someone is about to lose their livelihood, someone is about to lose their employment, and in as much as you can try and be as humane as you can be, it's not always very easy. It can be very emotional. And I would say one of the reasons we need to consider why we should, handle the process in a humane way, in a good way, is because it's psychologically and emotionally very challenging to the person being exited. We've seen people going to court and probably suing, and they're suing for the mental torture, the challenges they were underwent through because they were terminated. And the truth is, when someone loses their livelihoods, it's confusing. Sometimes they don't even know what to do. I mean, I look at the situations I've had to sit down and handle an exit, because we are exiting someone because of a disciplinary, and you have to have conversation. What went wrong? How can you avoid such scenarios in future, so that even as they are leaving, they know there's a human face to it. In as much as an organization, we cannot continue having this relationship. The other thing I would say, it's this person is losing their livelihoods, and you still need to assure them they're important and they can still be able to make something out of their lives. Whether with another employer, whether they will go and try something out there, it's important to just give that assurance that they can still be able to make something out of it. A lot of times when it's a disciplinary issue, and maybe it's even a gross misconduct, and someone has to be summarily dismissed, I can tell you, Anthony, it's not an easy process. And I don't know about Martha. And I think for me, those are the moments I've gone home and, I'm really stressed out, and I'm wondering, did it have to go down this road? Did this employee have to get to the place of exiting? But unfortunately, sometimes it gets to that point where a relationship is not working. Either they are not fitting into the organization because of culture, it's a character issue, or it's even a competence issue when they are not performing, and the organization has to achieve its objectives. So I would say for us to be able to offboard in a good way, as HR professionals, we also need to put a human face. We also need to understand the emotional turmoil this person will go through, so that we handle the process with the grace that it requires. Sometimes an employee being exited, sometimes they can become also very, I'm looking for the word, very aggressive, and they're feeling you're not being fair, this should not have happened. And the question is always, do we have the facts to be able to take us through the process and in the right way? By the time you get to the place of boarding someone, have you tried all other ways possible and it's not working and it's getting to this place? We have to part ways. We are sorry, this is not going to this is not working and this relationship is not working, but do it in a very humane way. I don't know what mother's experience is, but for me, the ones I've been able to handle in a good way, and this is not to mean that person has not gone away hurt. They have still gone away, feeling very bad that they have lost their livelihood, and they don't know where to start. They're confused. You need to make sure they don't get outside the road and get hit by a vehicle because they are so confused. They don't know what has just happened. Yeah, so I don't know what mother's experience is on this and how we can handle this in a better way.
Yeah, thanks, Zippy. Yeah, that's enlightening. When I look at offboarding, I look at it, what do you call it? As important as onboarding. So it's really the way you handle when an employee is coming in is important, that you handle the same way with the same importance when someone is leaving. And when I look at offboarding, I just first of all look at it in different aspects, like the nature of exit is important, because not everyone who leaves or we are offboarding is going from a negative perspective, and that is the easy part, because if the staff is the one who has resigned, then you have your due process,
Yes.
which should be well managed. It is very important for that process to be, as I have always said, to be part of strategy.
Yes.
So part of the processes in the HR strategy is offboarding uh, process that will help offer a memorable offboarding. So you ensure compliance, you ensure that you protect the organization assets, you ensure you keep doors open that someone can come back. But now that is the positive side of boarding and such. I know there's a word I think we use in HR. I think is it called boomerang employees. Boomerang employees are those who go and they come back.
Mm.
So you need to have that opportunity, because when an employee leaves and then they come back, those people are important to your organization. First, they know your processes, policies, and everything, but then they have gone out there and they have gained some more knowledge which they can come and add value in your organizations. So that is something important for HR even to look out. Um, for me, I always see, oh, this person, if someone had left and they want to come back, for me, I would actively go for those people if they pass the interview, because then they are easy even to induct and bring in. However, there is this other cadre that ZP was talking about, and maybe that is where our conversations are this morning. There are some people who we just have to disconnect for one reason or the other, and not in a positive way. And how do you manage positive voting process for these people? As in, already they are not happy with you, and they 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 just, you just want to disconnect. Maybe you have gone through a disciplinary process, telling that person, oh, I need to make an appointment with you so that we discuss your life in our organization. A person doesn't want to hear that. Most of the time, my experience, you find ZP is that, like us, we have, what is it called? We have a clearance form where we clear people, their clearance documents. And you'll find that person does not want to share. They just want you to send those clearance documents, they sign, and they leave. They don't want those discussions. What are you telling him? And you are disengaging in a way maybe he didn't want to leave. So as much as ZP is trying to say you can make that that offboarding better. I am not sure how it can be as good as you want. The most important thing is ensure that the process is followed. There is compliance
Mm.
in the process, including protecting your assets, and
Mm-hmm.
everything is documented. So if you have that checklist, the clearance form that has various people signing of maybe work assignments, notes on next steps, anything that you need, and also the assets they have for the organization, they are signed off, that they have been
Mm-hmm.
returned. The memorable part, I'm not sure how it can be memorable, positive, memorable for someone who you are disengaging on a negative note. So for my part is you try as much as possible to make it, HRs have a way of talking to the people, and those can be based on discussions. My experience is those people don't even want to hear HR because they think you're the one who sacked them. So ensure your process, the due process, ensure that they understand the reasons why you are disengaging. They will not understand, but ensure that they get the information, listen to them, let the process go, and let them sign the forms, and go well. I think that's what I can say about that, Zippy. Mhm.
Wow, wow. Ladies, you're bringing this thing in a very realistic manner. Yeah, you're making it very realistic for our viewers and listeners. And if you are listening to us, if you'd like to send a question, you'd have a comment, kindly send them. We are live. We would love. We are live on Facebook. We are live on YouTube. If there's something that you'd want clarified, you've had an experience you went through. Either it went well, you moved on from one company well, or someplace where probably you didn't live so well, or if you're an manager, businessman, an entrepreneur, and you had your experiences either good or bad in exiting certain employees, kindly send them. We would love to sample and listen to such, because it's here where as I said, our motto here is to build winning teams. So you need to learn how to exit people in order to maintain a culture, because building winning teams is basically talking about culture, and your culture has to be top notch for you to build a winning team. So it's true, Martha and Zippy, what you're saying. Zippy, I could hear you. You're feeling as a HR, it's important to understand the state of mind of this person. Wasitoke hapo nje waende wabondwe na gari because wana mawazo mingi. But now we did not discuss about. Okay, yeah, that I'll talk about that later. Just now, but I wanted to think. Uh, what is the best practice when offboarding? Martha, you've touched on it. In fact, Martha, you've touched on it just now as you were finishing about process, due processes followed. If they have company assets, they need to give them back. Flash disks, what? Access to cloud is closed. Access to email is closed. Yeah, if they had passwords, they are quickly scrambled and changed. Yeah, those are processes I've gone through myself when I was in employment. I could see the way quickly it's like, now, dude, you are a foreigner. Yeah, password quickly, it's changed. I have no access to nothing. Immediately. And some organization I've worked for, man, I was like, this is brutally efficient. Then I was shifted to being a non-person very quickly, but I could understand why they were doing that to protect themselves. So, Zippy, give us, in addition to what Martha has hinted, what are the other best practices that that you can do as a management, as HR, when offboarding an employee?
Thank you, Anthony, for that question. Before I got to respond to that, actually, something I've just remembered about the importance of onboarding employees well, and Mother has touched on that. The organization reputation is very important because you don't want to be in a place where your reputation is not good because of the way you have exited or the way you exit your employees. Unfortunately, I've seen situations where if an employee does something wrong, the tendency from the boss is, I don't want to see you here tomorrow, or you're, I don't know whether you have ever watched that show of the former president of the United States. You are fired, and you are fired on the spot, and you have no cause of recourse, and it's not a good way, and it touches on the question you're asking. So reputation, guarding that reputation for the organization and the interest of the organization is very critical. And to just respond to what you've asked about the best practice of offboarding an employee, I always say first understand the facts, and especially this is an involuntary exit where it's not the employee voluntarily exiting, it's an involuntary exit where because something has happened, there's a disciplinary issue, and you're having to exit this employee. Understand the facts, make sure you do your investigations, make sure it's not hearsay. We've had situations
Mm.
where information is brought to the HR, or maybe it's information from the grapevine, or someone has reported a case, but there are no facts, you can't substantiate. So as an HR, you can't just wake up and act without doing your own investigation and having all the facts to bring to the table, and getting the employee to answer to the allegations. And one of
Mm.
the best ways to handle this is make sure you have a very clear policy and guideline on how you terminate employees. Sometimes,
Mm.
unfortunately, we don't follow our own processes. We are very big
Mhm.
sometimes to violate the same. And sometimes it's also probably pressure from the people we are working for. And that does not mean you don't do the right thing. There are ways, and you can use wisdom to make sure the process is still followed. And when I'm faced with such situations, I always tell the employer, we need to look at it from two aspects. You can do it your way, where it's instant, you're fired, and incur extra costs and reputational damage, or you can give it another week or two to follow due process and exit in a way that is not going to bring you unnecessary challenges. So make sure you
Mm.
understand the facts, understand the issues that are being brought to you, so that you can be able to initiate a disciplinary process. Of course, you need to make sure the process is followed. You need to make sure you've gone through, giving the show cause letter depending on the offense, and giving the employee an opportunity to respond to those allegations. Now, when they respond to those allegations, depending on how heavy the allegations are, you are able to determine whether the response is adequate, or whether this needs to go further to a hearing, and you need to form the committee depending on how your organization is structured, and make sure there's a committee that um, is not biased, that will be able to give very independent opinions based on the case that is presented to them. Now,
Mm.
again, best practice, don't form a committee and give them the information on the day they're supposed to be doing the disciplinary. Make sure you also update them on the case, they understand the case, so that they are also able to prepare, so that when they're coming, they understand what they are having to deal with. Of course, during the hearing, it's important to hear the employee give their submission and the reasons probably of the things they have done and why they have done that. Assuming this is a situation that goes to termination, then it's important for you to ensure the employee has been given a fair chance of hearing, and they have been given an opportunity to appeal if the decision is to terminate them. Because again, just because you have terminated and there's a cause to terminate, doesn't mean the employee doesn't have a right to appeal. If they feel it's not fair, then they still have a right to appeal, and the decision, to be made by the appealing committee. And again, making sure just that process is very, very fair, so that as an employer, as an HR person, you are not acting from an emotional perspective. Because sometimes you can become emotional. You are acting,
Mm.
you're separating the person and the facts of what has happened, the offense and the person, you're separating the two. And I think this is where we bring our human perspective, where we bring where grace comes in. And yes, Zipporah, you have stolen, you have taken something that does not belong to you. It belongs to the company. So when you're dealing with me, it's not a personal attack. We are addressing what you have done and the consequences of what you have done. So I would think if you follow that process, then it will be a fair process. And even if the employee exits, they will not be happy. Chances are they will not be happy, but there will be a feeling of at least I was given a fair process, and they understand this is the reason that has caused me to exit. Now, to probably also address employees, it's important for us to understand when you have a relationship with an employer, it's a mutual relationship. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. As an
Yes.
employee, you're drawing your salary, you're drawing your benefits from the services you're offering to the employer. So the employer has expectations for you to make sure you fulfill the obligations for what the reason why you are employed. Now, again, we've seen scenarios where it's a performance issue. And unfortunately, employees start having, how do I put it? They start having, they start feeling bad when, it touches on their performance or non-performance, and it's brought to their attention. This is what you're not what you are doing right, and you need to
Mm.
rectify the same. Sometimes they'll probably take it as an attack as opposed to, okay, I need to rectify this. They fail to understand the employer has right, and the employer demands for you to be able to fulfill your responsibilities. The same way you will demand, if you're not paid your salary, you will be demanding, can I get my salary paid? We've seen situations where people are down in their tools and they're saying we are not going to work simply because either they've not been paid or they're feeling have not been remunerated well. And the same way the employer has those rights. So in the event that relationship is not working, I think it's important for us to also mature up to realize this relationship is not working and we can't force it. So if it's not working, can we find a better way of dealing with each other and leaving each other in a good way? I've seen situations where an employee exited very badly in an organization, and you end up meeting them in another place. Probably it's an opportunity that has come up, and they have applied for that job. Now, when you have an
Mm.
issue of this employee, probably who was very rebellious, or maybe who exited in a very bad way, or their behavior was very wanting, it becomes very difficult for you to be able to, even from a human perspective, to give them a very fair opportunity because already you have opinions that have already been formed prior about this person. So I always say, don't burn your bridges because you don't know where you will meet each other in the future. So when we are exiting, let's try and be fair as employers, but as an employee, also understand the reasons why you're being exited. Because when you understand that and go to another employer, you will not repeat the same offenses if you understand. But if you live in a way that you're feeling you've been aggrieved and you don't understand, yet you know you did something that warranted you to be exited, then chances are you will repeat the same offense and you will end up in
Mm.
trouble with your new employer. So that would be my take in terms of just following a fair process.
Thank you, Zippy. Indeed, you've brought up issues there that regards, okay, from an employer and an employee position. How do you handle each other now that you need to exit somebody? Somebody has done something gross or is alleged to have done something gross. Martha, from your perspective, you touched on due process. Kindly give us a few more if you have any more ideas. Practically, things you have done that help to onboard somebody with best practice, protect the company, and also let the person live in a dignified way.
Okay, thanks, Tony. And as CP has alluded, uh, an employee who is leaving is really an ambassador for that organization. And they're the ones who blow the trumpet for you out there or can also damage your reputation, as we have had. When Zippy was talking, I was looking at the various involuntary offboarding, and there are some that they come up because of the organization not being able to meet its the staffing. I remembered when I joined the bank.
Mm.
Uh, so the officer was put at that time. They had just, I think, introduced computers had come, and they were trying to train the senior managers on the
Mm.
use of computers, Excel sheets, nini, nini, nini.
Mm.
And I remember my manager who I found, I think he had 2 years left to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And he could simply not adjust to to computers, and he was not the only one. There are a few
Mm.
others in
Mm.
that cadre, and I think that's when for me that's when I've had the first word, voluntary early retirement.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And I remember shortly after that, I saw uh, in-house message of people being a circular, people being offered voluntary early retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the bank was targeting those people. But the people who took this early retirement were the young, the 30-year-olds who would get all
Mm.
the money and go to other jobs. So the
Yeah,
people who
yeah.
were being targeted, they never took this early retirement. But
Mm.
they were looking like they are stalling the organization because they don't want to move to the next level, like
Mm.
computers and all. And I remember my boss was volunteered by the organization as one of those who should take. So it's not
Volunteered.
he volunteered himself. So he got a letter volunteering him to be one of those.
Yes.
And I remember, so he didn't take it nicely because I think his mind was set within the next 3 years I'll be
God.
leaving. So he had planned his retirement.
Mm.
Um, And when I looked at him out there, he had assets, yeah, in form of
Mm.
houses, but he had not established somewhere where he can be going every day. But what I
Mm.
liked about the HR then is
Mm-hmm.
the offboarding process of those people. So they are
Mm.
not needed, but
Mm-hmm.
really you can't crush them.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to release someone, then they go die.
Mm.
I remember for the next 6 months, that my boss kept coming to the office.
After retirement.
Yes, not
Mm-hmm.
yeah, after being volunteered.
Mm-hmm.
it was an involuntary offboarding.
Yeah.
The manager who we were given actually
Mm-hmm.
came to the hall where we were seated and left that office for that man.
Wow.
And for the next 6 months, he came every day. And because he was very stressful, he just used to come and stress us. And and he's not a staff, but he makes noise at us, he harasses us. But
Wow.
because we had gotten communication from HR, we
Mm.
had to bear with him until the day he himself sends himself home.
Mm.
So I remember the first 4 months, he would come at 6. So when I come at 8, Martha, you are late. And I'm thinking, it's just 8, you know?
Yeah.
But he stressed us, but because HR had said.
Mm.
So we let him stress us. He would come, check his mail. And he has a computer, which he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't work with. So the only thing he was doing the whole day was play cards. You remember those solitaire?
Yes, solitaire. Yeah.
That's what he would do. And he would come 8 to 5.
Wow.
After 4 months, then he started coming at 10, then he
Mm.
leaves at 4. By the
Mm-hmm.
6 months, he would come like 1 day or 2 days in a week.
Mm.
So until one time, he'll just call to find out whether there's something for him.
Wow.
And
Wow.
then
Wow.
one day he stopped. So you can see that kind of offboarding. It was so
Mm.
involuntary, but the
Mm-hmm.
idea was not to crush these people because they
Mm.
had been with the organization for long. They had served that organization and
Mm.
brought it to where it was.
Yes,
And that's
yes.
why we keep saying everything about the organization depends on the culture of the organization.
Mm. Very true.
Because if it was another organization, there's no way they were going to allow him to do that.
Step.
See the door, and ujipange,
Mm.
you know? Then, so there's other involuntary involuntary exits, like in the NGO sector, where we really
Mm.
depend on funding.
Mm.
And that's why you'll find we have 1 year contracts, because
Mm.
then the donor releases money every year. And
Mhm.
as the last few years, the money that you were promised at the beginning of the project, you might find it has thinned, it has been cut.
Yes.
So if it's
Yes.
cut 25%, it means you have to cut 25% of your workforce.
Mm.
So you find there are some people who have to leave. So these are good staff, but they have to leave involuntarily. What is that
Mhm.
process you're going to use?
Aha.
Because then these people had not planned to
To leave.
leave.
Yeah. Mm.
So that's another involuntary process that you really
Yes.
have to document properly, communicate properly. You can even have something in the strategy of
Mm.
boarding
Mhm.
involuntarily. What is the
Mhm.
process? What is the
Mhm.
communication process? When should that communication start? Or do
Mhm.
you just
Yes.
tell someone, hatuna pesa, you are leaving next
Mhm.
month? You get. So even if
Yes.
I know my contract is ending, you give the beginning and ending, and
Yes.
people have worked in the NGO sector for long, it still never hits their mind when
Mhm.
it's time to go. So for me, I
Mm.
believe in preparing the
Mm.
people. If it's the final year, you keep
Yes.
mentioning, by the way,
Mm.
this could go like A or B.
Yes.
And if it goes A, this is what will happen. If it goes
Mm.
B, this is what will happen.
Mm.
So that we are always on the same page. And that does not stop the anxiety.
Obviously not.
But now, if you do it well, even the staff who leave, when they go out there, they'll talk nicely about you.
Yes.
Because it
Yes.
was not your fault that they have to go.
Mm.
And then, if you are about 40 and the money has been reduced for 20, so how
Yes.
do you choose the 20 that will
Go
stay?
or stay.
Yeah. So even that process is
Painful.
important.
Yes. Yes.
For
Yes.
me, I always advocate suitability interviews.
Mm.
We have 20 positions, you guys are 40. We will interview and we will take the number 1 to 20
Oh
out of
my
the school.
word.
And then also other things come to play in that process.
Mm.
Maybe the issues you have had during your course of work, indiscipline, they come to play. So the score is not just for interview, the score
Mhm.
performance appraisals also take into effect. So even
Mhm.
when you are making the final score, and then you take the first 20. So even if someone is aggrieved, when you go to sleep, Tony, you will know that you did a good, an
You did.
objective, because the word is objective. As we said
Yes.
earlier, there's no good way of telling someone to go.
Wow. Wow. That is
Hakuna,
true.
they will always be bitter.
Obviously.
But
Obviously.
you as a HR, when you go home and sleep, what process did you follow?
Mm.
Can you sleep and before God you can say, I did the right thing? Because you are dealing with people.
Yes. Yes.
And let me tell you, also things have a way of coming back. So if you do something, I use the word madogodanyo. If you do a madogodanyo process, or you let the managers manipulate you in
Mm.
how to handle that process, at
Mm.
the end of the day, you will be responsible for that involuntary
Yeah.
offboarding.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you are the HRs are the one tasked to ensure the process is
Mhm.
as seamless as possible. It's as painful, not less painful as possible, because there is
Yes.
no good way of letting someone go,
Cool. That is true.
including the ones, even the involuntary ones of disciplinary. The ones
Mm.
I was talking about. There's no good way of telling someone you actually wronged, because they always have a reason why they did what they
Yeah.
did, and they are convinced they are right.
Mm.
So the most important thing is you document and document and document, and ensure that you you have everything right, like Zippy said. You make sure your things are right. You are clear on why you are doing this. You're explaining the people why this is happening.
Yes.
And then now you guard the organization assets, and you make sure every document is in your file. Because if anything goes south, then you are able to produce the documentation. Yeah, that's what I could add about that. Thank you.
Yes, Martha, those are very powerful points that you've brought across. That indeed there is no perfect when you're exiting a staff, whether it's through retirement, retrenchment, disciplinary, something that it's not generated by the staff either resigning or deciding to move on. It's very difficult. It's normally a difficult conversation in as employers, as managers, as HRs, as entrepreneurs, you've got to handle this process well, because we've said that these people who go out there, whether they are voluntary or involuntary, are ambassadors, potential ambassadors. They can enhance or ruin your company's reputation. Therefore, handling that process sensitively is very, very critical. You know, Martha, I like the example you gave of that old man who the company was such, it really had a pity, allowed the dude to come. He probably had never planned what he would do. Even if he had retired after 2, 3 years, he was still probably grappling. What do I do with myself once I retire? Yeah. And now that it has come sooner than expected, helping the guy, okay, allowing, okay, you're sitting on your desk. Yeah, your office is still there. You have a computer, you have no idea how to use it, so you have no access to company information. Unakuja gazeti ziko unazisoma, unajaza crossword, you do all those kind of things. But they allowed him a soft landing because that's the kind of person who, and that was very strategic by your former employer, because that mzee is probably the guy who was a senior manager in the bank and who probably would influence others to go back to his former employer for loans, for what, for this and that. If that process was mismanaged, beyond probably harming this guy mentally, we discussed about mental health. He would have probably been mentally hurt and scarred. And now, obviously, consciously, you don't have to handle that. And reputational risk of the organization. That was a wonderful software. But I don't think many employers nowadays do that. If you do, can you imagine employers nowadays? You've given somebody early retirement na bado anakuja hapo kupiga ziara. Yeah.
I'm not
It
even
can,
sure there is early retirement anymore, Tony.
yeah.
I'm not sure people are getting money anymore. Maybe banks,
Yeah, yeah.
but people are sort of coming to contracts.
Yes, yes.
So that when
Yes.
the contract ends, my relationship with you has ended.
Yeah.
And that's where also the issue of severance pay comes. I think severance pay is when you can terminate a contract before it ends. So you also have to check the law. What does the law say?
Yes.
Zippy's contract is ending in December, but from September we have no work for her. So she needs to go home. So what does the law say? So also in offboarding, follow the law. Because
That is
then you should pay her, I think, 15 days for all the years work, isn't it? For every year worked. So you follow the law, because then that offboarding will not land you in court. So the most important thing is to document and follow the law. Yeah.
wow, 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 wow.
And I
Yes,
think just to
indeed.
add into what Anthony you've just mentioned about whether employers do, what mother's former employer did in letting an employee just come for 6 months, and we know they're not working, but we've allowed them that space. It's true, a lot of employers have moved to contracts, and I think it's also important for us to understand why have things changed over time, because 20, 30 years ago, I think the business environment probably was much better. Employers
Yes.
were probably able to operate business in a better environment compared to today. And I believe the government needs to do a lot more in supporting employers, because running a business in this country is not very easy. And yes, an
Mm,
employer caught between running a business well, running a business and making sure it's sustainable, and at the same time managing the workforce and making sure you're not getting in trouble with the law. So it has brought necessity where employers have to look at what will work for me. I don't think any employer who has an employee who has worked for them for many, many years would have a problem to probably have such a program where, we don't want
yes.
to treat people like we are throwing them away. We want to allow them the leeway to slowly, get
Mm,
used to the fact that they are no longer going to be working with us, and allow them that opportunity, allow them probably counseling opportunities, allow them, the necessary equipment they need or tools they need to be able to transition. But I think I would also, seek the government, if they're listening to us today, they need to do something about helping businesses have a better operating environment that would help us in terms of just how we extend that to the people we work with.
okay. Thank you,
And
Zippy.
also,
Even as
maybe
we,
the country has also grown.
yes.
Growth comes with a lot of dynamics.
Mm,
So the labor market is flooded,
mm-hmm.
and we know that we get rid of Tony, we'll get someone else very quickly.
Yes.
So, and then the fast-paced environment, technological or anything you call it,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't allow even for those voluntary retirements anymore. It's what you're bringing on
Mm-hmm.
the table. It's like a partnership.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why things have turned like that. And I'm not sure there are people who will be as patient as
Mm-hmm.
those years back where someone would just have a laptop for you to play solitaire. Um, so at the end of the day, it's how the culture of the organization is very important for the culture. That
Yes.
maybe organization culture was like that. And
Mm,
I pray it has not changed, because then that was the best culture ever I've ever come across in
mm.
my environment. That you could do that
Wow.
for someone. And even if you can't do that, what other things can you make the employee go talking about your organization and saying good things, and even come
Mm,
back at some point later in life? So that's
yes.
what we are talking about. That separation is so important, because then the organization reputation and
Yes.
also the well-being of the staff, do they go feeling whole, or
Uh-huh.
have you crushed them, you know?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
those are two aspects that people need to look, because then you don't want to send someone home and then they go die. Maybe they are not
Mm-hmm.
performing well in your organization, not because they are not good performers. Maybe they had a bad manager. So you
Yeah.
might find when they go out, they'll be shining. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why you hear, Tony, someone was not doing well here, but they're in another organization, they're
Yes.
in the fast track, they are shining. So
Yes.
it's not always that things happen because someone is bad. It's because then maybe they are not the best fit, and they can be a best fit for another organization. That's why those relationships needs to be handled very well. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. Thank you, ladies. Those are very good points. I can see Dr. Olive. Thank you for your comment. You asked, I think you're asking, is the offboarding process for an employee who resigns due to toxic, toxicity and indiscipline. Now, I presume Dr. Olive is asking if this employee decides to go, he or she has resigned because of their own toxicity and indiscipline. I think that is how she was framing it. Zippy, what's your take? What's your take concerning somebody leaving or somebody being exited? because of their indiscipline and stuff. Actually, it's something we wanted to talk about. Uh, we had said something regarding, we wanted to say this, it's just that time has really gone. Third point that I wanted to find out, what is the process you should follow of boarding an employee due to a serious issue, serious disciplinary, just something that went wrong. Very quickly, very briefly, I think that's what Dr. Olive is asking. Very quickly, very briefly, how do you handle that process?
Thank you, Dr. Oli, for that question. So let me talk about the issue of a toxic work environment. And I'm not so sure whether the question is from a place of the employee being toxic or the work environment being toxic. Now, in a situation where the environment is toxic and the employee ends up resigning because they can no longer be able to work within that environment for their own well-being, then I think it's important as an employer to understand why are they leaving. So when you understand why they are leaving and the reasons why they feel the work environment is toxic, then it becomes easier for you to also be able to address those issues so that other employees don't fall into the same trap. Now,
Yes.
one of the things, of course, you need to follow the exit policy or the termination policy you have in place, whether voluntary or involuntary. And in this situation, I would say number one, understand. So have a meeting with them, do an exit interview, get to understand the reasons, and hopefully they will be open enough to give you the reason. Unfortunately, when employees are leaving because maybe the workplace is toxic and they're feeling the toxic environment is caused by the management, unfortunately, a lot of times they don't tend to give us the correct feedback. But it's important for us to encourage them to give us feedback that would be helpful to the organization and that would help other employees as well. Whereas the employee who is toxic themselves and they have resigned, I think, for lack of a better way of putting it, it will be an advantage to the employer because we will not have to get to a situation of taking them through a disciplinary process and terminating them because they have caused a toxic work environment, they are being indisciplined, and probably because they've been put on the spot, they feel, I don't want to be put on the spot, and they end up resigning. Then in that situation, I would say again, allow them to do the exit interview, do an acceptance letter to their resignation, make sure you pay them their dues, whatever is entitled to them, and also make sure you give them the certificate of being of working for you for the years they have worked with you. And that would be a simple way of exiting someone who has just resigned. Now, to go back to your question, I'm trying to remember what it was. If you could rephrase that, Anthony. Or exiting someone because of indiscipline. Yeah. So
Yes.
now, exiting someone because of indiscipline, let's be very clear. Don't be like the show of you are fired, irrespective of what the employee has done.
Yes.
They have done misdemeanor or they have done something is termed as a gross misconduct. It could be they are chronically absenting themselves from work. It could be they are coming to work while intoxicated. It could be they are being abusive. It could be many things. It could be non-performance, whatever the reason is that is leading to a reason for termination. Be very clear to follow process. Be very clear, and Mother has alluded to this, to have clear documentation and the process that you're using to terminate. And why do we do this? It's because we don't want, number one, to be told we were unfair in the way we handled the process. When we
Yes.
have employees challenging us in the labor court, a lot of times we will find the reason that has been put that is unfair termination or the process was not followed, due process was not followed. You will rarely find a situation where an employee is being accused, you accuse an employee of stealing. It's always an unfair process. It's always, I'm trying to look for the term, Martha, where, the due process was not followed. So the challenge and the court, what they will look at was a process fair and was a process followed. So those two terms will break or make any case. The legality of whether there was a reason to terminate is very rarely challenged because there's always a reason that you want to end this relationship. So I would say, number one, document the policy and be very clear your employees understand these are reasons that will make you get terminated. Now, if an
Mm,
employee has had an indiscipline, check them through a process. Probably there have been situations of a caution where they've been given caution, maybe just a warning, verbal warning. They've been given a caution that is in writing, which is not a warning letter. Then it has gotten to a point, maybe they've been given a first warning, letter, a second warning letter. By the
mm,
time it gets to a third warning letter, then you need to make sure, because at this point you're probably considering exiting. Now follow the process of give a show cause letter, allow them to respond, form a committee, allow the committee to deliberate and give a verdict or recommendations to the management. Because I always say, and for HR people who are listening to me, it's not your decision to make. At the end of the
mm,
day, you're chairing this committee and you give recommendations to the management. The recommendation is to terminate, and the management need to consent. A lot of times, HR people have gotten into trouble because they have made a decision at the committee level. They have terminated
mm,
someone, it has come back as a court case, and the management has distanced themselves from the case. So it's important for us to also have a very clear process for us as HR professionals where the management is also fully involved and we're on the same page. We need to exit this person because of one, two, three. And also this becomes a second check where the person in management is looking back to see, did you follow process? Did you do this? Did you look at the case from this angle? So that there's no guesswork and there's no blame game at the end of the day. So I would say at the end of the day, yes, you need to follow process and you need to clearly document.
Thank you, Zippy. That's a very good answer that you've answered there, because it can be tricky. And I'm sure, Martha, from your perspective, I'm sure you've done a few number of, you know, exiting people who have, issues have come up in discipline, toxicity, and indiscipline. What's your take on, briefly about this question that we've had?
I think what Zippy said, I can add more because what all I would want to say is in court, they
Mm,
don't look at what the employee did. They look
mm,
at the process you
mm,
followed to offboard the employee.
mhm. Yes.
So for the case of the doctor, he talked she talked about intoxic employee and or indiscipline. And Zippy
Mm,
has said clearly there's caution, there is first warning, there's second warning, there's third warning. All that
mm,
is outlined in the Employment Act. And
mm,
then also ensure that you pay them their benefits and salary full to the end of the day that they are exiting. You make sure
mm,
everything is documented. So document, document, document. That is the
mhm.
process for exiting an indisciplined employee. And the most important thing is that you
Oh,
articulate what that indiscipline is. You don't just say you are indisciplined. It's very
yeah,
important to know what they did to be called indisciplined.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
put that in your file
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's what the court will check. How did you offboard that person?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
let me just add on to that, Martha. When you find an employee who is toxic, and a lot of times, I mean, it's a blessing if they're the ones who are toxic and they're leaving, because it will save you the pain of having to take them through a process. But a lot of
Mm,
times, when you find an employee who is toxic or who is being indisciplined, resigning, they've been put on the spot. They've been asked, they've been told, stop doing this. They've been, they've been put to task about their
mm,
behavior, and they are running away from being or taking responsibility of their action. So for them, probably the reaction is, I am going
mm,
to resign, and they would resign probably in a half. Again, I would say we need to be very careful with such kind of employees because these are the ones who will say, they were forced to exit or they were forced to resign. It's important
mm,
if an employee is toxic for you to document, give them a warning, have conversations about the same, and make sure it's documented so that in the event they are the ones resigning, you have a
mm,
fallback because you'll be able to clearly say, yes, they resigned. But this is what was happening. We had conversations, we had given warnings, but at the end of the day, because they did not want to be put on the spot, or they did not want to be corrected, they opted to resign. So that way, again, as an employer, you protect yourself. When you don't handle it and you leave it, and at the end of the day, you caution them verbally, you keep on talking about it verbally, you're not doing anything about it, and they end up exiting, then it can also become a challenge for you. So we need to be aware of such kind of challenges that could come up later.
Zippy, you realize managers, they will never want to document anything. They are going through stuff with an employee. They are just calling HR. This employee is doing it, but you tell them to document, they will never. So that leaves the HR at a very a place where you cannot act on anything that is not written. So managers should learn to document things,
Yes.
because once you find you have had enough, what you have documented is what you send to HR, and you give your recommendations concerning the employee. But then if you're just saying by mouth, and when you are doing their evaluation and performance appraisal, they are always scoring good. How is HR going to offboard that person whose documents are reading good? They are performing, there are good comments in the appraisal, and there's nothing in writing. So how will HR now offboard that person? You're aligning with your mouth, but when you're documenting good things. So managers don't want to look bad to an employee.
Yes.
They want to look good. They want HR to look bad. So for HRs, you can't process that offboarding because there is no documentation. And that's why I'm
Yes.
saying document, document, document. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, Zippy. Those are very good comments, very good explanations in handling. And that is why actually we termed this as employee discipline management, the issue of offboarding. Because if it's a normal offboarding, a staff has resigned, their contract has come to an end, those are pretty straightforward issues that can be handled. They have no disciplinary element to it. But where there is toxicity, there is indiscipline, there is serious breach, there is warranty for summary dismissal, then that is how the discipline management comes in, especially when offboarding. And I like the fact that you've talked about documentation. Whether you like it or not, you've got to have things in place so that in case that boomerang effect you are talking about, boomerang is not just about the same employee coming back to work for you. It could boomerang in terms of coming back to you for you to go to court, to go and meet ministry. Yeah, boomerang. It could boomerang for you to come and hit. You know, a boomerang doesn't come back to your hand. It can come and hit your head. You know, so it can boomerang and go and hit. You know, go to court or something like that. So that is very key. And I like the fact that you have explained to Dr. Olive about this. So, Dr. Olive, if you'd like to know more, we can get in touch and help in the event you need support. You know, within your school. I know you're running a school. If you need support, you know, helping in issues regarding disciplinary management, and any other person out there, if you're listening to us and you'd like to know more about disciplinary matters regarding how do you handle issues regarding offboarding that have touch on discipline, then kindly get in touch with us. We would love to help you. Our contacts are at the bottom of the screen, via telephone, via WhatsApp, via email, via all the links that we have that are at the bottom of your screen. I see one more question being asked by Kendi. Kendi is asking, how do you deal with a disciplinary issue when an employee reports to the director and the director doesn't want to be part of the disciplinary process? Yeah, Martha, these things happen. These things happen. Why are you laughing, Martha? These things happen. Just the same way you've described about a boss who does not want to document. They don't want to document, but they are imagining they are Donald Trump. You know, you're fired. But now, because the Kenyan situation, this is not a sitcom, it's not a television sitcom, they have to use HR to exit somebody. So we have seen these kind of things where I have gone through the same, by the way. I've seen the CEO of a company wanting. I remember was one time, for some reason, the CEO wanted to get rid of me, and he was shouting. She was shouting to the head of HR, "Get rid of this guy!" And the head of HR is like, "How? How do we do it? We have to have a process to follow." So, from your perspective, Martha, uh, how do you handle this issue where you know, uh, the director wants or the owner wants somebody fired. He doesn't want to be part of the process, but still wants that person to go. Have you gone through the same in your many years of HR management?
Yeah, what comes to mind is the bank I started practicing HR. The
Mm,
executive were expatriates and they come every 3 years. So
yes.
this CEO came and found this driver who has been in the organization for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the bank, the labor laws and the collective bargaining was great,
Mm-hmm.
was really vibrant. So you'll
Mm-hmm.
find people at that level knew their law, and they knew many things, and then they have the shop stewards to speak for them and all.
Yes.
And this director had a driver because then when they come, they can't drive in Nairobi.
Mm-hmm.
And the director wants to leave his home at 6. But the driver
Mm-hmm.
knows that he should be at the gate of the director at 8. That's when his time for work
Mm,
starts. So the director was so mad. Every morning he would come to my door. Get rid of her. So I'm thinking, what am I doing? So one day I called this driver and I said, why is the director complaining so much about you? Then he said, Martha, my letter says I report to work at 8. He wants me to be in his house at 6. And he had a valid reason. So I
mm,
was telling the directors, you need to document what is happening between you two because I don't seem to understand the problem. And then he
mm,
doesn't want to be in the mix. So
mm,
one day me, I just suggested to him, you are the one who have power. You can just transfer him to
mm-hmm.
another branch. And
Yes.
when you go, we can bring him back. Because I could
Yes.
just see it's a personality issue. It had
Yes.
nothing to do with work, it was personality. And that's what he did. Because you cannot act unless it's documented. In the
Yes.
bank, you try something like that. It goes to now the labor court using the union. You will never win. Yeah.
Yes. You can never win. Yeah.
So
That's.
it's a thin line, and you all I can say, for someone to leave an organization, there has to
Mm-hmm.
be documentation and the
Mm-hmm.
reasons must be valid.
Mm,
It can't just be, Tony, you have looked at me and you don't like my hair because it is
yeah.
red. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you don't like my nose, and then now you're telling your HR to sack me.
Yeah. It doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that. It never works like that. You'd rather transfer me because
Mm.
maybe there's another manager who can stand my red hair.
Oh,
And
yeah.
because I could be a good performer, it's just that my hair is red and you don't like it. So those things need, so you remove that person from the director, give them the person they can work with. As a HR, just take that person to another place.
All
That's
right.
what I would
Zippy,
recommend.
thank you. Thank you. Zippy, what's your take? What's your take? How Candy is bringing this issue?
Thank you, Anthony. And I can understand where Kendi is coming from because this is a challenge that happens a lot in SMEs where you find there are no structures. So I would
Mm-hmm.
say, as an HR, the first thing that you need to do is make sure you put structures in place. Make sure you put policies in place, and those policies need to be trained to staff, needs to be trained to the director. The director needs to understand the importance of having this process in place. Because if we don't train them, they will never know, because they are entrepreneurs, they are busy looking for business. They might not understand the law fully. And it's important for us to take the ownership and train the employees and the directors on the importance of managing disciplinary process as well. Again, it becomes a challenge where there's no structure in place in a small organization. And probably from what I'm seeing from the question, these employees reporting directly to the director. Now,
Mm.
and that means the director is the one complaining, like in mother's case. And perhaps maybe in this situation, there's nowhere to transfer this employee. Then I don't see how the director will completely remove themselves from it. However, I would say have a conversation with them and understand who else can sit in the committee if you're not willing to sit in this committee. There must be people who can sit in and listen to the disciplinary hearing, give recommendations to the director, and at the end of the day, he still makes the final decision, terminate.
Mm.
So even as you're doing
Mhm.
the termination, yes, documentation has happened, you have followed the process, and at the end of the day, he is still the one making the decision, but the key is the process has been followed. That is what I would say. But of course, make sure the disciplinary case that is being reported is legit. A lot of
Mm.
times, I think the cases reported by directors, most of the time they are legit cases, but sometimes
Yes.
it's probably the how is reported. Sometimes it's
Mm.
probably, the way the comment is passed across, and being able to understand where are they coming from? Why is this a pain to the director? Is this something
Mm.
that we need to talk to the employee about and we can be able to manage? Or is this something like it's a complete issue of character? These two people are not able to work together and we need to find a solution to it. So I think you need to look at it from many different angles, especially if it's a small organization where structures are not necessarily clearly put in place.
Okay. Okay. Wow. So there you have it for SME owners and directors and all that. You've got to follow the process. The buck stops with you. It does not stop with the HR manager that you've employed, your HR officer. You've decided this person gross misconduct. There's a process to be followed. You've got to either participate or enable the participation on the same. And at the end of the day, it is you to sign the letter. It is not the HR officer. It is not the HR consultant. It is you as the owner. Because if the process has been followed and you're confident enough that you've done your process, then exiting, it is you to sign. So that if they come, they
And
say, I
Tony,
own this answer.
maybe what SMEs needs to know,
Yes.
and that the person asking the question needs to know whether the director doesn't want to be involved or not, especially
Yes.
if it's an SME.
Mm.
It's important for them to know that the labor court not look at the issue.
No.
The labor court will look at the process.
Yes.
So I would explain to the director nicely
Mm.
that we need to document what has this person done.
Mm.
Because once we go to court, court will not look at what the employee did.
Mm-hmm.
Court will look at the process you followed to offload. So you
Yes.
can imagine if there is a fine for an SME,
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
SME is finished.
It's done.
So at times it's good to just bite the bullet as the director and just enable the process to go on. And then you can delegate. If you don't want to be in the process, by the way, you can delegate.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, you are the executive. You will, there's no way you can
Yes.
remove yourself completely, because every letter, everything, it is you who will sign. The
Mm.
delegated authority can lead the process, but you will
Yes.
sign the final documents. Thanks.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that, Martha. Actually, when you think about it, Zippy, I'd like to tell SME who are listening to us, owners and directors who are listening to us, that we are planning to organize a seminar for SMEs, especially for SMEs, owners, and directors, to give them direction on the HR process and especially in handling disciplinary issues. This is something, Zippy, we need to do soon. We will organize a seminar, invite owners and managers of small and medium-sized enterprises on, on giving them more ideas on just bring them up to speed on the HR process so they understand that as much as you're a small company, as Martha has said, the law does not care. You are an employer, you follow, you make missteps, you will follow in the same hot soup that finds the culprits who have the muscle to pay these fines, while for you, they can come and auction your house if you're not careful. So that's something that we'll do. So keep on the lookout for that. As we come to a close, today was Saturday. Today, ideally, was a webinar. You can get in touch with us at the contact at the bottom of your screen. But at the end, what you're saying to our viewers and listeners, our consultants can help you handle the HR process smoothly, efficiently, avoiding the potential mines that are there when it comes to issues regarding offboarding, and disciplinary, because there are some serious minefields there if you misstep this. With that said, this has been a wonderful topic to discuss. Martha, thank you very much. You've given us serious nuggets in handling disciplinary process. Zippy, as usual, we thank you for the time that, for as the lead consultant here at Aurum, for the ideas and the nuggets that you've also given to our listeners and viewers to understand that the process of disciplinary management is not punitive. It is an issue that you can, if you are a business person, if you are an owner, you can use disciplinary management to strengthen your culture. To strengthen your culture that in the way that you want to take it into, to strengthen morale, to strengthen employee bonding within the company, and to improve productivity. Because that is why any businessman is doing what they do. With that said, thank you very much to our viewers and listeners. Thank you for the time that you've taken to be with us. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for taking time to be with us. We appreciate you. We thank you for being with us. Martha, thank you very much. Indeed, that was the nuggets you gave us of what used to happen with people being allowed to be in an office for 6 months in order to have a smooth landing going to retirement. That was a wonderful nugget. Zippy, thank you for the wisdom that you've given us. And thank you, our viewers, and for taking time to be with us. We appreciate you. Next month, we will come up with a fresh new topic, and we believe it will be needed to Nasema. What do you say? When bread is coming from the ovens, when the cakes are hot off the shelf, we'll have something hot off the shelves, ready for consumption, ready for use, and we'll be happy to do this. So, with that said, thank you very much. Enjoy your weekend, and God bless you.